Good evening. Good evening, and welcome to our public lecture series sponsored by the Center for STEM Excellence. Sacramento State's Center for STEM Excellence works with area schools, colleges, universities, and employers to attract and educate young people for careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. My name is Jill Traynor, and I'm Dean of the College of Natural Sciences and Mathematics and co-director of the Center for STEM Excellence. And I want to extend a special welcome to some of our visitors. We have the students from Wilsey Wood High School. Raise your hands, all of you. Great. Welcome. We also have students from Sac City and students from John F. Kennedy High School and probably others. To all of you, a special welcome for coming to campus tonight. We really enjoy seeing you here. Let me take the opportunity to invite you to the next public lecture on March 13th at 6 o'clock in the University Union Ballroom. The speaker, Dr. Suzanne Ponto, who is co-director of the Umbilical Cord Blood Collection Program at the UC Davis Institute for Regenerative Medicine, will speak about neonatal stem cells. Tonight, it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Dr. Ron Coleman. Since the year 2001, Dr. Coleman has been a faculty member in Sacramento State's Department of Biological Sciences. He received a BS in zoology from the University of British Columbia and an MS in biological sciences from Simon Fraser University. He moved on to complete a PhD in zoology from the University of Toronto. Dr. Coleman then held a postdoctoral fellowship in the Department of Integrative Biology at UC Berkeley. The focus of Dr. Coleman's research is the evolutionary ecology of fishes, especially the evolution of parental investment. In addition to his research in the rivers of Costa Rica, which will be the subject of his talk tonight, Dr. Coleman is currently focusing research on fishes in the intertidal areas of the West Coast and the rivers of California. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Ron Coleman.
Did I get it right? Sound is good? Perfect. Thank you very much, Dean Traynor. Thank you, everyone, for showing up, particularly the young people. This could be how you spend the rest of your life. It's just a thought. So let's get started. First thing you should realize, I'm going to talk about the things that I do in my lab and some of the things that my students do, but you have to realize it takes a community to do research. This is not something that one person does. It takes the whole university and a lot of other people. We have fabulous faculty, administration, and staff here that make some of this possible. Just to give you a small idea, a lot of the photographs that I take with my underwater camera, well, that camera doesn't actually fit in the underwater housing that I had for it, but one of our creative shops people, Mike, found a way to make that camera fit in that housing. And that's what goes on here at Sac State, and that's how we can be successful. So I'm going to start my talk with a little bit of a story, a little bit of a lead-in. So this is the Rio Coloradito in the very, very south of Costa Rica. And this is my four-wheel drive vehicle that I drive around in Costa Rica. I rent it and look at various rivers. And you'll notice there's something just a little bit off about this vehicle. Those of you who are awake, because it's later in the day, will notice there's something a little bit strange about the back window here. Namely, what had happened is two gentlemen, and I use that word loosely, had come along with a rock. And while I was busy in the river down below doing what I do, they took that rock and they smashed the back window of my vehicle and took it upon themselves to relieve me of things like my computer and cameras and some money and my passport. And they took my pants, is what they did. They took my pants. What kind of person takes your pants? So the other question you might ask is, why would someone be so involved in what they're doing down in this river? What could they be looking at that's so interesting that they wouldn't even notice when someone steals their pants? Okay, it must be pretty interesting stuff, and that's what I'm going to tell you about today. Some of you maybe have been to the tropics. If you haven't, maybe you've seen a special on television about tropical rainforests, and a lot of those are filmed in Brazil, in the Amazon, and I've had the good fortune to be in Brazil a little bit. You may have heard of the expression, the flooded forest. And the cool thing that goes on in the Amazon, now this is in South America, is that half the year the water rises up very, very high, and it floods the forest, and all sorts of interesting things happen. And then for the other half of the year, the water goes down, and it can be a difference of about 50 feet near the town of, or the city of Manaus. 50 feet from high water to low water. The houses are built on floating things and all sorts of stuff like that. There's very interesting biology. This is the forest when the water's up high, and there's me snorkeling in the tops of trees 50 feet up into the forest. Actually lived on that boat for a few days. It's a magical place, and there's wonderful fishes in those rivers. And it's a very, very interesting place, and if you get a chance, definitely go. But what I'm going to tell you about today is if we go a little bit north of that into Central America, which is very tiny compared to South America, there's equally fascinating stuff working on a very, very different schedule. And that's the subject of my research. So first of all, we need to know where we're going. And so here's Manaus, Brazil down there. And what we're focusing on, where we're focusing, is Costa Rica. You see, it's very tiny. It's just a little sliver of land here. There's Panama, and there's Nicaragua up here. Costa Rica is that little sliver of land that connects Panama to Nicaragua and on to the rest of Central and North America. It's a very, very interesting place. And you'll notice that I say current location of Central America, implying that it wasn't always there. And in fact, it wasn't always there. Central America, as we know it, is actually very recent. It's about 3 million years old. And so why that is, perhaps you know a little bit about this, is the concept of plate tectonics. The continents on the surface of the Earth are sitting on, and part of the ocean basins, are sitting on large chunks of land, large plates which move around over the surface of the Earth. And they've not always been in the places that they are. Every school child has probably fitted together Africa and South America and realized they make a nice puzzle. They go together. They've been that way actually several times, in and out and in and out. And as these things move around, that creates all sorts of interesting phenomena on our planet. And so here's the way it is right now. We've got the South American plate right there, and we've got the North American plate, you're over there, the Caribbean plate, the Cocos plate, and the Nazca plate. And you'll notice, there's no test, so you don't have to worry about it, but you'll notice that they all come together right around there, which is where Costa Rica is. So there's a lot going on, and these plates are sliding around, a lot of mass moving around, crunching against other masses, and it creates some interesting action. And so here it is. The Cocos plate basically drives up against this chunk of land, and it crushes in there, and it forces up Central America. This is where you get a lot of volcanoes, and in fact, what you get is a ridge of volcanoes and mountains all the way down the spine of Lower Central America. And why that's fascinating for me as a biologist is you could think of it as a sort of a peak like this. So you've got the mountains on the top, and you've got water that flows down to the Pacific and water that flows down to the Atlantic. This creates a huge variety of aquatic habitats in a very short space. You can drive from here to there, and we have, in about 4 hours, right across from the Pacific Ocean to the Caribbean Sea. It's amazing how short a distance to have such a variety of habitats. And as a consequence, we end up with these very different river habitats. Up near the top, we end up with fast-moving water, and down near the coast, we end up with these slow, very still waters. And you can see those within a couple of hours of each other. And that's what makes it lots of fun as a person who studies the things in those rivers, namely the fishes. One of the big questions that I have focused a lot of my life trying to understand is how do the rivers, this environment here, how does that affect what's going on right here? This is a fish called a cichlid. It's a particular kind called tuba. This is a male, and that's a female, and there are their eggs, and they lay these eggs right in that river. How is it that the things going on in that river affect what these fish do? That's what I'm going to tell you about today. This is a typical parental care situation. This one's in the lab. This is a thing called a convict cichlid, and this is a male. It's a dad, and he is taking care of his kids. And I have been studying parental care for most of my life. I don't actually have any kids myself, but I study it here. And these guys are phenomenal parents. This guy, he's about, 3-4 inches long. He's in a fish tank. He's got his kids. If you stick your hand in that tank, he'll attack you. And he's serious. He'll try and take you out. Just imagine that. The size that you are, and if something attacked your kids that was 100 times your size. Well, that's the kind of parental behavior that these things have. They're vicious in attacking predators. I find that really fascinating. There's lots of kinds of parental care, not just in the cichlids, but in other fishes. A little sampler here. We've got the typical kind of situation where here's a fish, a parent. This turns out to be a mom. And there's her egg. She laid on a piece of PVC pipe in the lab. And she's going to fan them, moving her fin on the side, her pectoral fin. She moves that fin back and forth, and that puts oxygenated water over the eggs. A great form of parental care. And she also guards, like many parents do. But parental care can get substantially more elaborate. Here is another fish. This is also a cichlid. Cichlids are one kind of fish. And this one, you can see the lower jaw is kind of funny there. It's hanging down. That's because this is a mom, and she has about 150 babies in her mouth. She got them as eggs. They'll grow up as eggs in there. They'll hatch into little fry, which will still be in her mouth. And only after several weeks, when they're actually young fish, will they come out of her mouth and spend the rest of their life outside. It's a really cool form of parental care. There are other forms. Maybe some of the younger people here might have had a betta, a Siamese fighting fish at home. Fantastic fish. When you get one of these fish and you put him in his own little tank, one of the things you'll notice is he starts blowing bubbles. What's up with the bubbles? Why is he blowing bubbles? Well, he's bubble nesting. And he's hoping, it's always interesting to wonder what goes through their little heads, he's hoping that one day a female will appear in his tank. And lo and behold, every now and then it just happens, in plops a female, and then he goes to action. Because when she lays eggs, he takes those eggs and he puts them up in the bubbles, and the bubbles keep them aerated at the top, at the surface, so they can get lots of air and hatch. But of course, what happens with bubbles? They break, right? So it's not like he makes the bubbles once. He just has to bubble and bubble and bubble and bubble. And this is how he spends the next 3 days, constantly making bubbles in order to have those little kids survive. It's an amazing form of parental care. Here's another form. This is a surf perch found in local California waters. This one does live bearing. Just like human beings, they give birth to live babies. And she has quite a few more in her when she gives birth to them. But what's interesting about this fish that makes it, in some ways, even more astounding than human parental care is when her babies come out, when the little boys are born, they're reproductively mature. They're adults. They're ready to go. Okay, so any of the moms out there, just sort of picture this in your mind. Your son or daughter pops out at 16. That's a long pregnancy, okay? And that's what these guys do, or these girls do. Amazing forms of parental care. It isn't just males or females. Sometimes it's male parental care. Most fishes, it's males that take care of the kids. This is a sunfish doing its beautiful form of parental care. It makes a nest and the females spawn it. Then the females leave, and the males do everything. Here is female parental care on our coast here in the intertidal. This is called a prickleback, and it's only the moms that take care here. About a month she spends wrapped around that egg mass, even when the water goes away. If you happen to be in Tamales Bay and you turn over a rock, you may find one of these females out of the water, wrapped around her eggs. She'll stay there. That's the devotion of parental care. And if you were to go a little bit lower down in perhaps Monterey Bay, a little bit into the subtidal, you might see these. These are wolf eels. This is a dad. He's 9 feet long. That's a mom. She's 6 feet long. That's the size of a soccer ball. And if you put your hand in front of there, he'll remove it for you. They are very, very ferocious parents. And they guard around these egg masses for 4 months. No eating, 4 months of parental care. So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on here. Now, in order to study all this stuff, I have a lot of students that have worked with me and are working with me right now. I have 7 grad students and 6 undergraduates. And these aren't all the pictures. These are the people from the last few years. There's about 50-plus students that have worked with me or are working with me. So I'm going to give you a taste of what we do in the lab. I'm certainly not going to talk about all the different things that we do. The kinds of things we touch on are defensive behavior, biparental care, the fact that sometimes there's 2 parents, how do they sort out those decisions, mouth brooding, the taking care of the kids in the mouth, egg size evolution, we'll talk about that today, how this all occurs in the natural environment, and a whole bunch of other things, coloration, development, and growth. We do a lot of different things. I'll just give you a taste of some of the highlights. Where we do this stuff, if you go down over to Humboldt Building 119, we have our fish lab over there, lots of fish tanks, lots of work to be done, taking care of those. And we also do field work in various spots around the world. California, British Columbia, Costa Rica, and other places. I haven't got to Argentina or Peru. Those are my students. But one day I will get there. Here's the kind of stuff that we do. This is the kind of thing that really interests me when I see this. So this is a convict cichlid, a very common cichlid that we use a lot because they're very easy for students to get a pair of these, put them in a tank, and they can usually have kids and start doing experiments within a couple of weeks. And I love that. It gives students an opportunity to do real research. And this was a student research project right here by a student named Amir Thompson, who just finished his PhD at Cornell. So here we have a convict cichlid, and what we want to know is how should a parent invest in its offspring? What kind of things will affect that? And in order to do that, we need to have a way of asking the fish, how much is it worth to you to defend your kids? We have to present it with a challenge. And so we present it with a model. It's a photograph of a fish on a stick. And this works really well. And yes, you can try this at home. Don't try it on your kids, but you can try it on your fish. Okay, so you get a model on a stick, and you put it in front of this fish. She's got some kids back there, and you move it in just the right way, and she will attack it. And it's remarkable how much she will attack it. Sometimes she'll bite it 30 times in 30 seconds. The interesting thing that Amir did is he noticed that when this fish bites, notice where it's biting right there? Any guesses where that is? That's the eyeball right there. It's the soft spot of the fish. You want to get someone away, poke them in the eye. Well, other fish know that. So this fish is attacking this predator by poking it in the eye. And what Amir did that was just a fascinating experiment is he said, well, does this fish really have some sort of concept that that's the eye? And if that's the case, what if we use Photoshop and move the eye? And he did. And the fish bites where the new eye is. So they are somehow able to deal with the fact that it's a weird fish. It's got an eye in a strange spot. But they attack there to get this predator away. Now, that little experiment, and it's a great little experiment, actually tells you a whole lot more, because next time you're snorkeling in the tropics, maybe you've gone to Hawaii, spring break or something like that, you'll see an awful lot of fish which have false eyes towards the back of their body. That's why, because it deflects attacks of predators. Amir did that work. Very nice stuff. Okay, I want to show you what parental care looks like in the wild. I'll have a few video clips, and we'll hope that the video works. It's always a bit iffy, but there we go. Okay, it's going to work. This is a fish called Septum fasciatus. This is in eastern Costa Rica, and there's a mom, and there's a dad, and can you see the kids? There they are right there. Little tiny guys. They're about 2 weeks old, swimming around, just doing what little kids want to do. They want to eat a little bit here and there, and mom and dad are watching. They're watching to see that there's no predators around. There's always predators around, but because the parents are there, the predators are staying away. These guys don't have a whole lot of space in the wild. An area about your arm's reach is about all they get. And then there's another pair. You can actually see the other ones right up over there. There's another pair with their kids over there. Now, you may look at that and say, well, it's kind of casual. They just sit there and the kids do their thing, and not much is going on. That's kind of hiding the truth. It's because the parents are there that not much is going on. If the parents weren't there, a lot more would go on. And so I'll show you the next video clip. Okay, now what happened here, sometimes when we do our work, unfortunately, the parents get scared away. And in this case, it's a bunch of eggs from a fish called the tuba, that they have their eggs, and my assistant, Maddie, who's actually now a dentist, I had her put her hand over the nest so that we covered it, and I went and got the video camera, and then I'll show you. This is shot in real time. See how long it takes other fish to realize that mom and dad are not home and that lunch is served. So I tell Maddie, okay, get ready. Take your hand off. And there she goes. And about a second. Already, other things are in there. And they're like, this is free food. It's good food. These are fish eggs. They're full of nutrition. And other fish are like, hey, what's going on over there? Let's get in on that. This is interesting. We've been studying these a little bit lately. These are parents from next door. They've got their own kids. Here's their chance to feed up, get some free lunch. And so they're in there. And you'll notice what's going on. They grab them and they tear those little eggs off. Now, this is the stuff of fish nightmares. Okay? If you were a fish, imagine this. What's gone on to get to this point in time? Here we had a pair of fish that ate a lot of food to get themselves in perfect breeding condition. They searched through the river to find a partner, a very difficult process to find just the perfect fish. Then once they were a pair, they had to seek out a good spot, and they cleaned it. If you look around here, you'll see it's actually very clean. They cleaned this whole area. Took days to do that. and then they mustered up the energy, and they finally fertilized those eggs, got them stuck on the rock, and it's all going just fine, and then they messed up just once, for a few seconds, and it's all over. This is why I study parental care, because if you mess up at parental care, the consequences are enormous. You can see now they're starting to fade out a little bit. They'll start to drift off because we're really down just to the nubbins of eggs. There aren't even any kids left there. Every little twitch, that's a fish grabbing a baby and ending its life. It's nasty stuff. And so this is parental care. Okay. I'm very interested in the decisions that parents make when they provide parental care. And what I mean by that, I don't mean it's not the same kind of process as you going to a restaurant and saying, well, I think I'll have the cheeseburger versus I'll have the other burger. How I talk about decisions is that the parent takes an information and it acts on that information. Okay? Well, in this case, what's happened here is we have a bunch of eggs that were laid, and you'll notice some of them are white. Well, what happened is those particular ones were not fertilized correctly by the male. How the female responds to that is fascinating. She comes along, and she grabs the white ones, and she eats them, and she pulls them out. We try to understand, why is that? Well, it turns out that these white ones are white because there's a thing called a water mold. You can think of it as a fungus that gets in there and eats dead eggs. And once it's eaten the dead egg, then it oozes out like some sort of alien creature, and it starts eating the live eggs. Now, does the female fish know this is what's going on? I don't know, and that's not really that important. What is important is when she sees a white egg, she eats it, she removes it, and the fungus spreads no further. This is how natural selection molds these complex behaviors that we see. Now, other kinds of decisions that fishes make. Here's a female, it's called a rainbow cichlid, and she has made a whole bunch of decisions as to exactly how much she's going to put into each baby. That baby right there gets exactly that much stuff. It's about 1.4 millimeters worth of stuff. Any guesses on how many times she made that decision? And they're all the same decision. Any thoughts? Who can guess? 2,000? 50? More than 50, right? Less than 10,000? It's 798. I can tell you that because I spend a lot of time counting those sorts of things. I also spend a lot of time measuring them very, very precisely. And she's made 798 identical decisions that every one of her babies should get exactly that much stuff. Why that's interesting is that other species, the females of other species, don't get that much stuff. Other cichlids make eggs this big, or that big, or that big, or that big. Why is it? You can imagine that the baby that starts from that has a lot more material to start its life with. It's basically got a big head start over something that starts with that. Very interested in why that would be. So I'm interested in egg size and the effects it has on the parents, how many eggs they can lay if they lay eggs of a certain size, or how big are the kids when they come out of an egg of a certain size. Little eggs make little babies, big eggs make big babies, and so on. And all of that, I'm interested in how does it occur in the natural environment. We do experiments in the lab, and we do observations and experiments in the field to tie it all together to make sure we're working on things that really are problems for these fishes. So just so you know, just a couple little things you might have been wandering around in your mind. All females in a species of cichlid lay the same size egg. Pretty much, if you're a convict cichlid, you make a convict cichlid egg. And in fact, it's to the point, having measured enough of these, if you gave me the egg, I could probably tell you which species laid it. They're that precise. Egg size is not a function of body size. In other words, little fishes don't make little eggs. In fact, some of the biggest eggs are made by some of the smallest species, but they only make a very few. There's one species of cichlid that only makes one, and it's a great big egg. It doesn't even come out round. It comes out like a big long sausage, and then it reshapes itself into a round form. There's a lot of interesting stuff here. Big females, they just make more eggs. The kinds of things we do in the lab and in the field. We take these eggs and we subject them to different things. Like in this case, we hatch them in hatching cups. We might put them at different temperatures. Here's a heater, eggs hatching. You can do all sorts of things with these eggs. Here they are, one tank at one temperature, one tank at another temperature. The kind of stuff we get from this, and don't worry, there's not a lot of data slides. It's not about that. I want to give you the idea, but we'll use this idea later. Here is a graph where we took eggs from the convict cichlid and put them in those little dishes and hatched them out at different temperatures. They're all brothers and sisters' eggs. They all started life at the same time. What's interesting is how long it takes them to get to the next stage, namely to hatch. Well, here's temperature, so that's like cold room temperature, and that's your body temperature up here. So if they're at cold room temperature, they take about 5 days. The exact same egg at a much warmer temperature, up near your body temperature, hatches in 2 days. So this temperature can be very important. That's an interesting thing that we found. We're going to use that. The size of the egg, well, I already alluded to this. Little eggs make little babies, and big eggs make big babies. That's important too. Here's a typical kind of experiment that one of my students, this is Nina, did this for her master's thesis. And it's the kind of problems that we like to attack. So here's the situation. For most cases of parental care, fish, birds, frogs, people, parental care after the offspring first starts, the baby first starts, whether it's born or hatched, whatever, parental care is relatively low. And then it rapidly rises up to some sort of peak, and where that peak is depends on the organism. And then after a while, the parents start doing less. This is sort of like a cat weaning its kittens, or parents maybe saying, you know, it's time for you to get a job. That kind of thing, okay? So we know why this goes up. We understand that the offspring needs more and more resources, and so the parent puts more and more interest. What we're interested in is, why does it go down? And there's really two good explanations for that. It could be, okay, because the fry, the young, are better able to survive on their own. They're in pretty good shape. They could survive if the parent went away. Wouldn't be great, but they could do it. It could be that. So it could be something about the condition of the fry. Or it could simply be the parent saying, you've had enough. I've got other things to do. I've got other kids. Time to move on. So the one is about the kids, and the other is about the parents. Which is it that actually causes this? Well, here's where we bring in some of our other experiments. See, we have a whole mesh of one student doing this and one student doing that, and it all works together. We started with a bunch of convict cichlids, and after they spawned, we took half their babies away, and we put them in, well, I call it the freezer tank, but it isn't really freezer, it's just cold. Okay? And remember from that graph, what happens if it's cold? They develop more slowly. Well, we've got those developing more slowly over here, and then we've got the regular kids, which are here, and we test them with that model to see how many times they bite. That tells us how much the parent's willing to defend. And it goes up over the days to about here, where it starts peaking at about day 7. And then we present an interesting problem to the parent. About day 8 here, we take the kids from the freezer tank and we swap them with the ones that the female has been taking care of. So they're her kids. They're not like there's some other kids that she doesn't care about. These are her kids. But now, imagine what's going through her little head at this point. It's like the kids somehow aren't as developed as they were yesterday. In fact, they're like 2 days old. Something's weird happened here. You know, I don't know exactly how they think about this, but nonetheless, something strange has happened. How do they respond? So if the parent is dropping its parental care because it's something about how the parent perceives the world, what would we expect to happen? We would expect the parent to continue dropping just the way that it normally does. But if somehow the parent is able to actually evaluate the kids, look at them and determine they're not where they should be, they're not developed kids like this, they're actually kids that are back there, what should she do? She should, instead of continuing to decline, she should bump her care back up. And that's exactly what they do. So here she is. She goes, wow, something happened to the kids overnight. I don't know what happened, but they need more care. I'm going to have to ramp it up for a couple more days. This is the kind of thing that these fish are capable of doing. This is why we study parental care. We want to make sure that what we're studying has real value. It applies to the situations that occur in the field. And so let's take you to Costa Rica, where we do a lot of our work. So there's Costa Rica there. San Jose is the capital. You land there. I have been based for the last 20-odd years in Puerto Viejo in the northeast rainforest, in the lowlands right where the mountains level out, and that's where we do our work. So this is what it looks like when you come into Costa Rica, central ridge of mountains. The weather comes off the east, off the Caribbean. The storms hit those mountain ridge and they drop all the rain, just like our rain comes from the west and drops the rain. So if you want rainforest in Costa Rica, go to the northeast. Don't go to the northwest. You're going to get West Texas. If you want to see rainforest, go to the northeast. So that's what we get. This is San Jose, a typical Central American capital. You want to get out of there pretty fast. get out into the countryside. You need a four-wheel drive. Driving there is a very interesting sort of thing. I pack lightly. There was 5 students and me, and I think they had that bag and all the rest was mine. I have a lot of camera equipment, and you got to have provisions for every possible scenario. So this is driving. It's a full contact sport in Central America. You got to be fully awake. These lines here are really a suggestion. They're not really a rule. And so sometimes cars are coming at you in the arrows. You're saying, but it doesn't matter. That's just how it works, okay? There's trucks everywhere. They're very, very fast. They're very big. And their attitude is, they're bigger than you. They'll roll over you, and you'll just bounce off. And so they come all over the place very, very quickly. They cut across right in front of you. You just got to be fully aware of this. Sometimes they roll over. It's a truck that rolled over. They left it there just to sort of as a demo for other people to slow down. Didn't really help. You got trucks like this with sugar cane, you know where your sugar comes from. Really cool driving behind a sugar cane truck, and little wisps of sugar cane come flying off the truck. That's kind of almost magical. Not so good when it's pineapples, because they're like bowling balls bouncing all over the road. Very interesting stuff there. Costa Rica is a very progressive country. I love Costa Rica. They move forward. This was a bridge that wasn't strong enough for the truck that was heavily loaded with things that went over it. And so the bridge went down, the truck went down, they came along, they built one of these bridges right over it, and on goes Costa Rica. That's just how they do stuff. They move forward. So you got to appreciate that. You always have to watch out for the weird stuff that's going to happen, the X factor. You'll notice you can't really see, there's a mountainside there. This falls off into the bottom of the earth over there. It's at dusk, it's foggy, and this person says, I've got to pass. You could be coming the other way. You need to be aware of that. Where I work is called the La Selva Biological Station. This is our center base, and we move all over the country from there. It's an organization run by about 67 universities, mostly North American, but also some in Europe. And they have a chunk of rainforest, which we bought a long time ago, and we control the rainforest. And the beauty of it is you get to see actual rainforest that has never been cut, and all the things that go in it. So there are trails in some spots, makes it a little easier for us to get through the forest without damaging it close in. It also allows you to see important things that you might be about to step on, because all the creatures are there, including the snakes. Okay, there's my lab. Every year I take people with me. This year I had 3 people with me. My partner Alina was with me. She's been there a couple times. And Christine, who's in the audience, has been my assistant for at least five years now. And she knows very well how to do things. And she's also an artist, and so she draws these beautiful sketches and paintings of the places that we go. And this year I took one student, Alex. I don't know if Alex is here, AJ. So there are little hazards in working. Sometimes you get a leech or two, but really you're just feeding the forest. That's all part of the grand circle of life. It is important that you take people that are what I call bug magnets. These are people who draw in the insects, and they get all the bites, and then I don't get bitten. It just works perfectly. So that's part of the interview process. There's creatures all over the place. Great big owl butterflies the size of your hand. These kind of things which open their wings and scare you. Katydids which eat meat. Be careful about those. Giant cockroaches, hopefully bigger than any you've seen in your house. Birds, beautiful trogon we saw this year, and chestnut mandible toucans all over the place. Mammals, anteaters, and wild pigs. Christine, I put this in. I'm not a big fan of monkeys, but there's the howler monkey. I'm not a big fan because they're called howler monkeys because they howl. And they like to howl at about 4 in the morning, right above where you're sleeping. I don't like these very much. It's very loud. And after several weeks in the forest, it's hard to tell, but that's the sloth and that's me. We start to converge looking a little bit alike. So there's bats and there's frogs, all sorts of the little poison arrow frogs that you may have heard of, other kinds of hyla frogs, smoky jungle frogs, cane toads. Young people look away. These two are making more frogs. That's the boy, that's the girl. Notice the girl is much bigger than the boy. You know the challenges that females make males do. The challenge here is he hops on and he has to hold on, and she hops all over the place. And if he can't hold on, she doesn't want anything to do with him. That's his test in life. So he's smiling, he's happy, he made the test. So there's frogs that you can see through. You can watch this glass frog, you can watch its innards work, watch its little heartbeat. Really cool. Turtles. Snakes, this one will kill you. And this one will kill you. This one will definitely kill you. But not all of them will. But it takes a bit of time to learn them, so it's best just not to handle these things. There's other beautiful snakes which are not deadly, but you don't pick them up and lick them. Okay, there's lizards, and then there's these kind of guys, the iguanas, which look like they're just the owners of the whole place. They sit in the tops of the tree. There's spikes up there. He's trying to look as impressive as he can for the females, and he sits up there. He's very, very brave, except, of course, if you scare him, in which case he dives into the river. And there he is on the bottom, prudently hiding, and no one ever sees him except we do because we go in the water. And so I want to take you into the water. So other people see that stuff, but they don't see this stuff. I've never seen a photo of an iguana on the bottom of a river before. There he is. So we wear full wetsuits. The place is really, a lot of people think of it as a forest with water running through it. I think of it more as water with a little bit of forest around it for accent. This is the typical river situation. It's very, very dark when the trees are there as they're supposed to be. There's full canopy cover. It's cold in the river. We need the wetsuits to stay warm. And just to show you a little bit, so we'll get our wetsuits on. This is Alina getting ready. So what we do, we just get our gear on and we hop into that water. And so you see it above, and there she is. And so we're just going to take you down and see what you would see first in the rivers right near the Puerto Viejo, where I do most of my work. So this is the cast of characters you would find under there. There's a bunch of different fish. There's about 8 of them there. They have names, but don't worry about the names. That's not the important thing. The important thing is they all live in and amongst each other as adults, and yet they breed in very particular spots in the river, and they make eggs of very particular sizes. And this is what I've tried to understand. Here's the numbers. There's eggs that are small and eggs that are large. That's the important thing. Small to very large. And so why is it that these fish can live amongst each other most of the time, and yet when they breed in very different spots and they make very different sized eggs, very exact size of eggs? What's going on there? Well, here's the way it goes. This is the convict cichlid. It's a beautiful cichlid when it's courting. This is a female. She's got her courting colors on. She's dressed to the nines. She's looking for a guy. Okay, and they very actively look for guys. She cruises around in the river, tries to find the most attractive male that she can, and after she finds the male, then the colors go away. So there's no colors there, and this is them working as a pair. They're biparental, both of them. She's looking this way, he's looking that way, constantly on guard to see that things don't eat their kids. They do some weird things, like here's a guy swirling in the ground to stir up food. This is another fish, also a small one, but you'll notice here you get a little bit more of the context. These are tree roots. Notice how there's no big green plants like you might see in an aquarium in a pet store. There's none of that here. There's nothing green alive under the water in these rivers because they would eat it, okay? It goes very, very quickly. You could put some lettuce under there. They'll just eat it. They're always looking for food. But there's these roots, and these fish hide close to the edge of the roots. A lot of silt, very dirty. Sometimes we can't see hardly at all. This is where they lay their eggs, right up under the edge there. This is the female when she's courting, beautiful gold color. There's the gold. Male has a bright blue eye and some reds on the chest. Very, very pretty. Then once they actually have their kids, the colors completely change. You wouldn't even know it's the same fish. They get dark eye, dark spot, and dark there. And their babies are tucked away on all this silty and leafy stuff there. The water's moving very, very slowly. These are backwaters. Very still. And there's not very many backwaters, so it's not easy for these fish to find a good spot and a good mate to mate with. Here's a slightly larger fish with a slightly larger egg. The important thing, it's called Elphara. The important thing is, notice this here, this yellow pelvic fin, the fins on the bottom. Why that's so important is in the dirty water, the baby fish, these little dots down here, they can't see mom or dad. All they see are these fins. And they look up, and if they see a yellow fin, that's mom or dad. If this particular species were to look up and see a black fin, they're about to die. A different species is about to eat them. So they're very tuned in to the color of that fin that's above them. There's a female. This is what eggs look like in the wild. So there's a female. She's about the size of your hand, and there's her eggs, about 1,000 eggs, clustered on top of a rock. So 1,000 little cichlids there. Another species, this one with a very, very long nose, called rostratus. Rostra means nose. And the long nose is because of the way they eat. They dive with their nose into the dirt, get a bunch of dirt, chew it up, and then eat the good stuff and spit out the bad stuff. That's how they eat. but we can use that knowledge of behavior to find these fish in the very silty water. So here's a female, and there's her nest. And how I found her is, look at this. See all these holes? These are mouth pits, or mouth prints. The only reason why you'd have a whole bunch of mouth pits together in one spot is because the parents are staying there. And the only reason they'd stay there is because their kids are there. And those are her kids right there. So we look for the mouth prints, and then we can find the parental fish in water that you can't see more than 6 inches. So we use behavior to understand behavior. Another fish, this is called Nicaraguense, beautiful male. He's about 9 inches long, and there's his female partner. She's about 6 inches long, and they have the most fascinating breeding behavior. I discovered this about 10 years ago. We could never figure out where this fish spawned. They never seemed to make a nest in any of those spots we looked. And then I started noticing these holes in the side of the river. Well, they make those holes, these tunnels. They don't just find them, they actually drill them. And it's the male who's the real drill bit. The female starts it off, there she is right there, and she gets the hole started. It's not rock and it's not sand, it's a clay, it's hard on your hands. But they do it, and they do it with their heads. And see right here, there's a bunch of mud. What he does is he rams his head in, sticks up his fin, which has a spine in it, and then he spins like a drill bit. It's the most incredible thing you'll ever see. He spins. And you're like, no. Other fish think it's cool too. They come to watch. It's like, oh, he's digging a hole. This is great. So there he is. She's backed out. He's got to go and do the major drilling. And look what you get. It's 3 feet of perfectly drilled hole. You couldn't do better with an auger bit. It goes right back into the bank, and they lay their eggs right at the very end of this. Why they do this? The cool thing about it is that they can spawn in faster water than those fish which laid those tiny little eggs, which hatch into tiny little babies, in the silty water. These guys can make small eggs which hatch into little babies, but the babies don't have to deal with current because there's no current in the tunnel. They've made their own little safety zone in there. Here's a tunnel that was a little bit peculiar. It was short, so that's what it looks like. It was only about 1 foot deep. There's the eggs tucked in the back. When the weather's good, the kids come out to the mouth after they've hatched, and they can swim around. And then when the water's moving quickly, they just go right back into their own little safety zone. Truly remarkable stuff. All going on in this river. There's other creatures there. This is a Jesus lizard. First time you'll see this, you'll be amazed. The 50th time you'll see it, you'll be amazed. They run right across the water. You're like, wow, if I could do that, that'd be great. But you can't. I've tried. You can't. There are other creatures that share the river with us. These are caimans. They're about 6 feet. They're not so bad. There are crocodiles. They're about 15 feet. They're bad. So we could be careful with those. They're actually cute, the little guys. This is Neotroplus, another fish. It doesn't dig its own tunnels. It uses tunnels. It makes a larger egg. So it's spawning in fast waters. Very dark fish with a white bar when they're spawning. When they're not spawning, they look exactly the opposite. So they tell us what they're doing. There's a female. There's little kids. There's a male. Very large cichlid. This is the predator. You can think of it as the jaguar in the system, the thing that's eating everything else. This is a wolf cichlid. The males are about 2 feet, a little bit larger than that. Great big fish, 6 inches across the mouth. This is what a female looks like with her babies. Finally, tuba, the fish that I've spent a lot of my life studying. It's a really remarkable fish. It's fairly large, about 14 inches. Notice the male here has this incredible hump on his head. Females love a big hump. Size matters. Okay? They look for a male with a big hump, and they spawn with that male. The cool thing is this is a very fast water fish. They live in very fast water, and that hump is very tall, but it's very, very narrow, so it doesn't catch the current. So this fish, unlike all the other ones, it's not spawning in the silty backwaters. When I first saw this in 1989, this is what got me really interested. These guys, and there's a girl with her breeding mask on. She only has this when she's got kids. They lay this stuff right out in the open water where the water is just screaming past really quickly. And so why are they able to do that? Well, they're able to do that because they make enormous eggs. And these enormous eggs hatch into enormous babies, which can swim in very fast water. So you see this egg size and where they lay them and how the size of the babies, it all ties together. There's the big eggs. They hatch into these things called wrigglers, which are large. And there's a mom with her kids, and they can swim better than you can on their first day of life. They're just amazing. They're just phenomenal swimmers sitting out there in the current. I have to hold on, and these things are just swimming all over the place. Here's a pair of them. Notice the predators, always ready to eat, always ready. And the kinds of things we do, you go to Home Depot, you get yourself some plumbing parts, you put a little motor in there, and you put baby fish in here, and you ask, how fast can you really swim? And that's what we do here. And these guys can swim incredibly quickly. Why that's important? Because remember, this is a rainforest. And in a rainforest, it rains. Not like the little rain we get here. Real rain. Big rain. Rain like this where you think the heavens have just opened up and all the water is coming out. And an area of the river like this, which was a great spot for those fish that laid the little eggs and the little backwaters and little babies are starting off and things are just looking great, in an hour becomes like that. And so remember what happened when the babies got separated from the parents? They all died. And so this is what goes on in these rivers. These babies, these fish that make the little babies, they breed and they make kids, and the kids rise up, and then the water sweeps them away and they're dead. And they try it again, and it sweeps them away and they're dead. But the tuba makes those big eggs. It doesn't have very many, but those kids can keep up with the parents, and they can swim in these storms. And I know because sometimes I go in the river with the water like that, and I see them out there. I'm holding on, and the little kids are like, this isn't so bad. We can swim in this. So, very complex river, all these different habitats that the fish are using in relation to their egg size. In order to understand this, I needed to understand, well, how often does this rain thing happen? I know when I'm there, but I'm only there for 3 weeks in between teaching. So I have a little computer device here. It's called the depth logger, and it's busy right now, right as we sit here. It is recording the depth of the river going up and down. That's what it looks like. It's a little computer. It records the data, and I download it every year. And this is what it looks like. Okay? Don't worry about it. It's not on the test. This is 1 year. This is, the green scale is the feet. Notice that number there, 35. Okay, I was actually there for this event. The water went up on a Friday to Saturday 36 feet. Okay, 36 feet in a day. Imagine the little creeks around here. You're walking around, and then it's 36 feet higher 12 hours later. And then, by Monday, it was back down again. If you went away for the weekend, you wouldn't even have known. This is the world that these things live in. This isn't the Amazon of half the year up and half the year down. This is a weekend up and then down and up and then down, with babies dying left and right and parental care intimately tied and all that. So, why do tuba make larger eggs? They make larger eggs because they don't get very many of them, and it actually takes longer for them to develop, but they get these big kids, and these big kids can swim better, and they can survive these storms, and they can exploit parts of the river that no other fish can. We worked on that story for a while, and we said, but does that apply to other things as well? And so we moved around the country, and I'll just quickly show you some of the other projects that we do. In moving around the country, we see other cichlids. Sam, one of my undergraduates, has been working on the color patterns of cichlids, so that's an ongoing project for several years now. All we do is we get in the car, we got a GPS, and we go. I will snorkel absolutely anything. You don't know, there might be something in there. There wasn't, but there might be. There are rivers we don't go in. Anything with a name like the Toro, the bull, does not sound like a good river to go in, and you would die in there. These are nice rivers. That one, the Rio Frio, what do you think? Cold, and it is. Okay. We see the fish that we've seen already in those other rivers, things like the tuba, beautiful male. Notice how thin his head is. And there they are, and there's their kids swimming. We see that kind of stuff. And then we see some other things we don't see in our local river. This, I call it a lipstick cichlid. Look at this. Bright, bright red lips. What's going on there? We don't know. Why is that? More questions to be answered. Sometimes interesting things happen. The bridge that normally goes across to the town of Rio Frio had washed out, and that doesn't stop certain industries. You go to the ends of the earth, you'll see 2 trucks there. The first will be the beer truck, and right after it will be the Coca-Cola truck. I bet you go anywhere on this planet and you'll see that. The trouble was I was snorkeling right there at the time, and I looked up, and the driver looked down at me. He didn't expect to see me snorkeling, and I didn't expect to get run over by a Coca-Cola truck. We worked it out, and I'm still here. So other rivers, like the Herediana, a nice little river. It's got a culvert next to the highway. You wouldn't think much is in there. But there I am with my gear, and right in this water, about 8 inches to 12 inches deep, there we are right on the edge. You see some beautiful fish. This is Septum fasciatus with its kids. Samantha Hilbert took this gorgeous photo. And I just want to show you this video. This is some of the cool stuff of what goes on when you get some time to watch. So you've got 2 parents there. So mom and dad, so there's dad and there's mom. Notice the mom is doing the bulk of the work. We have interesting experiments about why is that. And there's the little kids. And there's a lot of tetras. These are called tetras, and they eat the kids. And so the parents are getting agitated. There's a rock back here. If they can get the kids back next to the rock, they're a little more protected. And so the challenge is how to get them there. Look at the fish here. She flicks her pelvic fins, and that's how she talks to the kids. And so they don't necessarily listen, though. They spend a little time out here, and then like, okay, we'll come back. And so here you'll start to see them moving back over the log. She wants to get them in here. And every now and then, one of them doesn't pay any attention, so there's a stray, and so you'll see she has to go get them. And she goes and gets them with her mouth and picks them up and brings them back to the rest of the group. Dad's watching to make sure that the tetras don't get too close. There, the kids are starting to come back. And now that they're getting a little bit more safe, so protection is the first thing she's got to worry about. And the next thing she has to worry about is lunch. The kids need to eat. And what they eat are little insects and things on the undersides of the leaves. Well, the kids can't get to those, so mom has to make them available. She literally feeds her kids. And so watch what happens here. She gets one last chase, and now she's got to go get lunch for the kids. So here's the leaves, and the leaves have to be exposed. Oh, sorry, one last kid. She's looking around to see, okay, now she's got them all. So there, time to get lunch. And she turns it over for them. Isn't that great? And if you watch, you see all the little kids swarm in to eat the stuff. And then if the leaf starts falling back, she gets a little bit of attitude, and she's got to get back over. There she is, pushing it back over. Did you know that fish feed their kids? It's remarkable stuff. Elsewhere in the country, we see other fish similar to the fish we've worked on. Same story seems to apply. This is in the very southeast of Costa Rica. Let's go to finish up to the very southwest. So I'm working up here, showed you a little bit there. Now we're going to go down over here. So you got to drive around the country. There are a few hazards every now and then. You can see we got a little bit of a road issue here. But you're okay because they put the yellow tape there. And at night, that's particularly comforting because there's a couple of rocks, too. So you'll be safe. Sometimes 3/4 of the road isn't there. That's an extra surprise. Here's a great river. Want to go snorkeling? You think, that's fantastic. This is the Rio Tarcoles. Fantastic river on the west side. Looking up into the mountains is beautiful. Water would be wonderful on a hot day. And you're looking downstream and you're thinking, look at that, ocean's out there. This is a great spot to go. There's a few rocks in the river, but that's not going to be a problem because you'll avoid the rocks. Except one of those rocks looks a little bit weird. Okay? You see what that rock is? That rock is one of these. That's a 15-foot croc. That one you don't have to worry about. That one you have to worry about. The one you can't see and the one down there. See, there's the guy under the water, and those can surprise you. If you're not careful, well, bad things happen. So we're going to head further south to finish up. We're going to go right down to the Panama border. We stay in motels every now and then. Some of the other adventures we have, I don't know if you know, ever seen these things. This is how you get hot water in the tropics. The electricity runs through here, and the water's supposed to come out there, but see how the electricity and the water are mixing? You don't really want to adjust the shower when you're in that one, okay? Here's a beautiful river, the Platanares. Notice that area right there. Perfect spot like our other rivers we'd expect to find spawning cichlids, and we do. This is like our other fish, but different, and this is called altifrons. Another river, the Tobago, is this beautiful thing which is like the convict, but different, called the Sahica. And I'll show you just a little bit of the parental care of that. This is the dad. He's just gorgeously covered here. He's all fired up in color. And there's the mom, and there's their little babies. Notice the predators are always there. They're always around. They're not even hiding. They're right at the door, ready to take advantage of any slip that these parents make. Now we're at the Panama border, and we're going to go back to where we started. So right about 7 miles north of the Panama border is the Rio Coloradito, where we started out with the car. And it's a beautiful, beautiful river. Lots of interesting stuff in there. When it's clear, it's glass clear, and sometimes there's just wonderful fish in there. The fish breed right below these weeds. This is Sibaldi. It's like the tuba, but different. This is a non-breeding one. Here's what they look like when they're breeding, and the picture doesn't do them justice. This is actually a light blue. There's a mom and a dad and the kids. And there's a mom with all of her many kids. I'll show you this little footage. This is what their life is like. The incredible intensity of predators waiting to eat their kids. So there's mom and there's dad. And if you look at dad, you'll notice that there's something a little bit funny about him. He's missing the top, right? This is their life. He was either partially eaten by a crocodile or a bird that got him into their mouth and started chewing and took bits off, and he wiggled out, and he's like, okay, now I'll breed, and has kids, and is a fabulous daddy, has lots of large babies over here taking care of them. This is the situation of parental care. Studying parental care and these eggs has led to all sorts of interesting things in Costa Rica. We've expanded this to studying around the world. I haven't traveled around the world to Africa yet, but we do a project, what's called citizen science. People all over the world send me egg samples from cichlids that they have bred as part of the cichlid hobby. A lot of aquarists keep these fish. And through their efforts, we now have the eggs of 250 species of cichlids. And people all over the world are involved in this, and it gives them a chance to do real science. We also, so there's the cichlid egg project. We're also interested in, what about closer to home? What about California? Well, we don't have any cichlids in California. They're tropical, right? But we do. Maybe you've never heard of it, but the Salton Sea is one of the most bizarre places in California. There it is down there. So if you go to LA and go 2 hours east straight to about Palm Springs, Palm Desert, go a little bit further, you hit the Salton Sea. And why it's so weird, it's 35 miles long, it's very shallow, it's much saltier than the ocean, and getting saltier every day. It's about 1.5 times as salty as the ocean. It burns your skin to go swimming in this place. There are thousands of fish-eating birds that live there and migrate through there, and they need fish. And yet with water that salty, very few fish can survive. In fact, one of the only fish that can survive is an introduced cichlid, a mouth-brooding cichlid from Africa, which can live in this totally toxic water. We're studying this. One of my graduate students, Shannon Waters, has been studying this. This is what it looks like. The buildings are all decayed. It once was a popular place. It looks like some sort of movie set. The trees are all dead. There are the birds, and they need fish to eat, or they can't survive. And we're counting on this cichlid to be able to survive in there. As the water gets more and more, this is the line of salt water. Here's fresh water. This is about where we're at right now, where it's much saltier than seawater. In 10 years, it's going to be really, really, really salty. And what Shannon is trying to figure out is, can these cichlids, already they're dying in large numbers, can they breed at this incredible salt level to produce babies to feed those birds? And we all love those birds. Those are the birds of California. If these fish go away, your birds go away. We need to know the answer to this. That's all I wanted to tell you about my research. But a lot of people, when I finish up my talk, they ask, so, by the way, what happened to all your stuff? So I'd like to finish with this. It's a bit tragic that there are few individuals anywhere like those 2 people that took my stuff. But one of the wonderful things about Costa Rica is there are so many wonderful people. And I'm really indebted to this country, and I dedicate this talk to them. We have met all sorts of fantastic people who have shared their food with us and their hospitality and just been generally nice. But this one was over and above. Nancy, who's a tica, a woman from Costa Rica, she lives right in the town, Ciudad Nelly, right where our stuff got stolen. And it turns out that she had actually been in Sacramento for part of her life for her education for a couple of years. And when she heard that one of her countrymen had stolen my stuff, she was really upset, and she wanted to fix that. So she and her husband actually found out who stole my stuff, found out who that person sold the stuff to, bought the stuff. 3 months later, a DHL truck shows up at my door in Sacramento. A box of stuff is there. I open it up. There's my computer. There's my Palm Pilot. There's my books. There's even my passport. Only thing missing, no pants. Thank you very much. If there's a couple of questions, I'd be happy to answer those, and then after I can answer questions personally. Why is male parental care so common? That's a great question. Male parental care is common in fishes, and it has to do with the fact that in many fishes, what a male can do is he can mate with multiple females and accumulate all their kids together. And so what we call the cost of care, the fact that he's giving up matings in other systems, doesn't apply. He can, and sometimes with sunfishes, he'll mate with 10 or 15 females and do that. It's a great question. We got a question from a high school. Oh, we got a question there.
How can I get some of that footage? Do I need to meet you?
You can come talk to me. Yeah, you can come talk. Any questions from a high school student? Well, you can come up afterwards and ask me questions. Oh, yes, we do. Yes. By the fishes, yes. I probably, the best time I was attacked was actually not working on this, but was working on sunfishes. It turns out I was hovering over the nest of a fish, and I didn't realize it, and I look up, and out of the blue water comes this 2-foot-long fish who goes straight towards me and beams me right in the forehead. And he's like, get off of my nest. And so I swam away, and it was fine. We've had a few run-ins with the crocodiles, but never really, really close. So you have all the fingers. So anyway, thank you very much. If you have questions, come up front, and I'll be happy to talk to you.